Hyundai Ioniq 9, a family-oriented three-row electric SUV. And before you get nauseated with the idea of that, this is definitely a big change in direction for this brand. And I'm gonna get into some of the technical reasons why in the shop, but let's start talking about the price first. This starts around 59 grand for a rear-wheel drive model, and then the next trim up gets all-wheel drive, but it's essentially the same features other than more adjustability in the seat. You have to go to the SEL trim level all-wheel drive, which is, somewhere in the $65,000 range to get the 360 cameras and some of the safety suite that you're expecting. But they really force you into the limited or calligraphy to get things like the premium audio system from Bose, including the active noise cancellation and a lot more of the niceties. And that's really pumping the price up past $70,000. So the outside, they've spent a lot of time on interior and exterior design of this car. It's not really a big surprise for this brand. They focus a lot of their energy. They did have a global design team from Europe, the United States, and of course Korea to figure this out. And I think they've taken the best of all worlds here, because the outside, it's clever use of packaging, like in the sensor pack in the front. They've hidden all of it behind this really clever black piece, and then you still have like the individual pixel thing, which they talk about, like, throwing back to video game design and some of these things that the Ioniq brand has brought to the table. But other brands struggle with where it hides sensors. You see it with BMW, Porsche. Most brands really struggle with that, and they just make it so cohesive here. From headlight design to taillight design, it looks great. And even the body lines now are not full of a bunch of like crazy triangles. It's much smoother, despite the door handles being very gimmicky and bandwagony, very Land Rover-ish. They're super solid compared. I mean, like, you pull on them, you don't fight with them. It's not like they don't pop out when you need them to. So I think the software side of the keyless entry system is sorted out as well. The way that the roof line is, the way that the sides are, the way that the body is flowing air underneath. It is a very slippery car, and that's important when you're driving a big-ass SUV around. That as electric, you have to work with the battery pack confines, and they did a really good job here compared to like the Rivian R1S, which really struggles with aerodynamics and range on that vehicle. This does not. But on the inside, a lot of the cohesion is also here. The big thing that they tried to do is spend a lot of design on like textures and feel, and that's physical controls, door handles that are physical, no electric actuators. The steering wheel controls are all physical, no haptics or touch. You have a physical rotary knob and tuning knob and physical buttons to get to your commonly used features. And your HVAC controls are partly physical, and then there's a touch sensitive membrane here at the bottom, but you never have to interact with the touchscreen for any of that. And the big thing is you're not in the touchscreen with this car a lot like you are in many other cars. And I think they're starting to understand that you can make a car feel great keeping some of the tried and true things here, even though it might increase the cost of doing so instead of doing generic screens. And there is a generic threaded screen in here like every other brand, but really the software's gotten pretty good. It does slow down a little bit when I'm using Android Auto, like wireless Android Auto, but overall the stability of it seems very good and well sorted out. It does have a manual toggle for preconditioning of the battery if you're in the cold, so you can tell they're doing a lot of things over there to update these things and keep them relevant. Storage is a highlight. Electric vehicle, they can do things that other cars can't. This huge sliding center armrest allows you storage, a walk-through path, gives you clear path to put bags down here. There's a multi-tiered storage thing here for phones or whatever else. There's a 100-watt USB-C charger in the front and in the back if you're charging tablets or you need to power a laptop. I mean, power is not an issue in here. Storage is really well thought out. Cohesion is, there's tons of visibility. It's super comfortable in the front seats. Great adjustability when you move up. You can kind of recline the seat back if you're charging. The second row is insanely comfortable, easy to get in and out. You're not fighting with this. But when you go up to the trim and you get these electromechanical seats, all the power adjusted seats, they are very slow. It's slow to put the third row down. It's slow to adjust the second row to get in that third row, which is kind of pretty tiny, honestly. It's for small kids mostly. Some of the electrical systems in the back are just kind of cumbersome that way. I'd prefer them to be physical, but I guess in this price category, they want everything electronic. Which also allows you to adjust them in the screen. And that's another reason it's there. You can kind of adjust all that in the screen so you don't have to like fight with the seats in the back. So, I appreciate a lot of the attention to detail, right down to ambient lighting. You look at Mercedes and some of these luxury brands that turn it into a circus. They put LED light strips everywhere, like if you went to AutoZone. This is not like that. It's so integrated into the cockpit experience that, they're starting to figure out how to do this without it being gimmicky, and it just works. In terms of cargo capacity, when you have all seats down, it's enormous. It's a really big space. You're not going to struggle with that at all. And even with the third row up, I can fit 2 large international luggages. Although it does max it out, it is far more usable than some of the other vehicles that we've tested. On the upper trim, again, you get the Bose audio system, but that's basically relegated to the limited trim and the calligraphy trim, which also enables that active sound cancellation, which I'll talk about in the shop. The audio system's not bad. It's really a little bass heavy, but to be expected because every single car brand is doing this now. But overall, this is a very great interior space and super cohesive on the exterior. I think people looking for an electric vehicle that's 3 rows, this is really fighting for one of the best on the planet right now. But let's head in the shop. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tech stuff. Underneath the Ioniq9, this is built in their factory in Georgia called the Meta Plant. That's right. It's new as of 2025. It's making the Ioniq9, Ioniq 5 there, and they have the capacity to do things like building plug-in hybrids as well. Their goal is to build upwards of 500,000 cars or SUVs there long term. Now, the other thing they're trying to do is bring more things in-house to that factory, like their battery tab with LG Chem. That's housed out of there, and eventually they're going to do some of their supply chain, like steel manufacturing somewhere in the south, but that's future discussion. With the Ioniq 9, much like all of their electric cars, it's built on eGMP. It's a scalable platform that they can build every single electric car they want on, from Kia, Hyundai, and Genesis, from small to large, like this. All of the Ioniq 9s are about maximizing or maximum stretch of that platform, and these vehicles all weigh upwards of 6,000 pounds. They're absolute tanks. That's because they are all equipped with 110 kilowatt hour battery packs. Now, depending on what trim you get, the lowest range, which is the calligraphy, it's because you have dual motor. It's more powerful, so your range is lower end of 300. If you get the rear-wheel drive only version with a single motor, you can go up to 330 plus. Of course, this is all dependent on how you're driving and in your temperature that you're driving in, but they all come standard with heat pumps, which is really good. You can choose manual battery preconditioning, and this vehicle gets NACS by default, which is the Tesla standard charging port, and it comes with an adapter so you can go onto the old CCS chargers, which is things like your Electrify America. Now, they have gone into bed with 7 other manufacturers, or more than that probably, for the Ioniq charging network, which supports CCS and NACS charging. So no matter what you have, you can go there. There's a whole bunch of charging network infrastructure that's being spun up. It's way better now than it was, let's say, like 5 years ago, where it was very scarce. So there's far more options. Now, the thing is, the NACS, of course, version 3 Tesla superchargers take longer to charge this than the old CCS standard. If you find a 350 kilowatt hour charger, you can do 10 to 80% in roughly 20 minutes. With the Tesla superchargers, it pushes upwards of 40 minutes to do the same thing. So again, pros and cons, depending on where you live, you have more options with this. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts briefly. The aerodynamics of this car is really amazing for the price point. They put a ton of effort. You can see it on the underbody, on the exterior. Very flat, big surprise. It's got a battery pack. This is a strut front with a split lower control arm on the body. A lot of this has to do with load. And the rear is a multi-link. One of the bigger things they've attempted to do with this generation is they're adding more foams in certain areas. They're really trying to drive down noise, vibration, and harshness, so this is a much quieter vehicle. And they've implemented several strategies, but one of the biggest is, instead of trying to get the structure-borne noise from the body perfected, which takes a lot of time and development and simulation work and testing, they're trying to split the difference for something that's not a pure luxury car. So the way they do it is they add in active noise cancellation on certain trim levels. So basically, limited and up, you get the digital active noise cancellation, which is sending out cancellation frequencies on the inside part of the car. It works with things like foam in the tires and the acoustic laminated glass, which that part is standard across all trim levels. So again, there's creative ways of doing this physically or mechanically and also digitally. Now, in terms of power, the base rear-wheel drive unit gets 215 horsepower. When you go to the all-wheel drive variants, it's about 303, and then you go to the upper high-performance trim levels, it goes into the 400s. Really, you're not buying this for performance, but if you're looking for higher power and torque, then clearly you have to go to the limited and the calligraphy. this is a vehicle that is definitely far advanced from where they used to be. I think they've sorted out a lot of their issues, and I'll be curious to see how this is when I take it for a drive. Oddly enough, Jack wanted to take a vacation to Bowling Green for an all-American Corvette car, but little did he know, this is all-American too. Oh, I like my 3-row SUVs, floaty and fast. Whoa! Oh! This is not the type of vehicle where the suspension instills you with a ton of confidence. This is a very soft, compliant, comfortable, quiet, and isolated SUV. Exactly what you want it to be. Yeah, there is almost no stress driving this thing. I couldn't believe when I got it for the first time, and I really didn't bore myself with all the technical presentations at that point. But what the designers tried to do on the interior space and the outside was, I don't know, you hear this a lot, is try to make it just a stress-free environment. And I think there's a combination effect of, one, you know, the acoustic treatments that they did with the glass, the foam, the underbody, the aero, it's all added up to a lot. And with the noise cancellation and the limited and the calligraphy trim, it does get rid of some of the pavement noise along with the foam in the tires. It's really, really refined. And not only is it refined, it's really good to drive. All the ergonomics are sound, seat adjustability is great, everything that you want from a family vehicle. And, you know, I talked about this on the interior. I love the fact that they haven't taken the EV formula, at least in this car, and turned it into a completely digitally dominated experiment or experience. Because things are very physical, tactile. Like, I'm never fumbling around and pecking at a screen to do the common tasks. It's just an easy car to get used to driving. And in terms of performance, you know, I'll be honest, I've driven plenty of like high performance EVs, and they're all fast. It doesn't matter if you get the low trim level, the high trim level, they're all quick enough, and this is just another one where you probably don't need to go all the way up the food chain. One of the things that I really like about driving this too is the all-wheel drive system. You know, I'm just driving with stability control on right now, and I'm gonna flip this back into normal. The stability control system is more progressive here than most of the previous Hyundai and Kias that I've driven until you get it to the absolute limit. When you start pushing this thing like 70, 80, 90%, it finally figures out like, hey, what is this person doing? And it turns off the power. But basically, there's just enough rotation, just enough change in direction where you feel confident that this thing's gonna turn despite it feeling very large. The efficiency part is what's really surprised me. You know, there's only a couple 3-row SUVs of this type, kind of like Lucid Gravity, which is definitely in a price point above. You have the R1S, which they talk about how this competes with that, and this is far more refined. I wouldn't even put the R1S in the same like refinement category as this. And then the Volvo EX90, which is probably the closest thing. I'm getting on average 3.0 to 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. When you do the math, and even on the fully loaded trim here, that's around 330 to 350 miles of range real world. Now, as soon as you start dropping the hammer and you drive it like an idiot, which you're not gonna be doing in here, you're gonna start to see 2 to 2.5, which, you know, is gonna get you down in the 250 range. But honestly, if you're driving this like normal and everyday traffic, and if it's just you leave it in driver only HVAC because it improves your efficiency quite a bit there, you're gonna be getting over 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which means you're probably gonna see an average of 320 to 330 miles of range conservatively. So they've done a great job here in terms of aero efficiency and all that. The thing that I don't like about this driving experience, and the one thing that's kind of gnawed at me quite a bit, is everything's done so well, but they continue to have difficulties in suspension tuning. And if you look at other manufacturers, they're leaning on many other suppliers for their suspension systems. Like ZF is kind of the gold standard for adaptive dampers for a lot of cars. You get air ride in a lot of vehicles. In near 70,000 for this, or 65, 70,000, you're still using their standard non-adaptive dampers because they do all their damper tech in-house. And what you get is a lot of this side to side. You get the left to right like bobble effect on almost all pavement types. And what it does is it creates a lot of head bob. I'm constantly feeling like jostled left and right. Although vertical compliance is pretty good. I mean, it's on a little bit on the firmer side, so it's not super boaty, but the fatiguing part is this kind of left and right. You notice it on broken pavement and concrete surfaces. And I think this is where they're gonna have to start leaning more into adaptive damper tech to kind of smooth out some of their ride. I think they've taken everything they can do with their damper tech right now to the limit. And this really does need to borrow some stuff from the Genesis cars, because those are just far more, flat. There's far less bobble and a lot less head toss, and that's one of the things you're gonna have to do if you're gonna drive this. Keeping in mind the price point, you're really getting close to kind of luxury car price points. You're gonna want to get in here and figure out if the ride's good, but overall everything else is tremendous. I'm just gonna get right into the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the Ioniq9, and you can tell, much like the Ioniq 5 from start to finish, I think this is one of the best products this brand has ever made in its history. And that's because there's a level of continuity on interior design and exterior design. And this is something that if you watch any of our Hyundai and Kia videos, you'll know I rag on them constantly. I feel like they're desperately trying to reinvent the wheel every single time. They lose their brand identity by just picking stuff out of a hat. Again, they're always trying something different. And here, doing something different actually worked. And I think they knew the limits of what they were trying to do, not overcomplicate the car with a bunch of needless tech. They stuck with the things that worked on the interior. They did a unique exterior design, and while you could argue, yes, they're trying to copy certain brands, I think this has enough of their own DNA to say that is a Hyundai on the road, and it's a good thing this time, So in terms of drivability, it's ultra refined. It blows out of the water any of their internal combustion offerings in terms of refinement, even their luxury products. It's just so smooth, it's so quiet. The only thing you can really rag on is their continued difficulty with trying to figure out suspension damping. It's sometimes it feels really good, but oftentimes it just is like, it's got this unevenness that I talked about in the drive. Again, it's one of the few areas that they can improve as a commodity brand. And at $70,000, I expect more. I think they should have a really good adaptive damper implementation at this point for that price. So other than that, I mean, it's got the safety features, it's got the tech features. The only real concern is the price. Is this affordable for most people at near $70,000 when you spec it out? I mean, if you can get the dealerships to subsidize this with some money off and there's not a ton of margin, or if the brand itself is really buying down leases like they were with the Ioniq 5, this is one I would definitely own for 2 or 3 years as a family hauler. It's that good. I just hope that they've sorted everything out here in terms of reliability. And, in general, they've been pretty solid, but again, great vehicle. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.